coming back to us at Safe Space Talks one more time and again. And we have a great topic today because, we brag and we talk about the importance of therapy and our victory in overcoming trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when there's the residue of trauma in your life?
That's good.
Now, trauma, you can get over trauma. Don't be misled. And the effects of trauma, you don't have to have that for the rest of your life. And we're pretty much living proof of that. But there are some things that get imprinted in your brain. And then when stress arises
Yes.
or a trigger or something, you may feel a little like, what just happened? But it won't be in the overdrive of when you initially had the trauma. And then when the stress or trigger came, you just was out of control or battling anxiety, panic attacks, etc.
Mm.
Now, an example of that is like if I asked you, what did you do last Saturday? You would go in your mind would activate and try to drum up what you did last Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the same thing. When you unpack your trauma and you go to therapy and you use the tools and you go through the whole process of unpacking and developing new ways to handle the trauma, with that residue is the same thing. So something may trigger you, and then your mind is going to search and find. But now that you've told yourself a new story,
Yeah.
you won't respond to the old story
I
in the
love it.
matter of being in
That's
emotional
good.
distress.
I love
So to my girl, Dr. Latoya, I'm gonna pass the mic.
it. Well, good afternoon, good
Switch
evening,
it up,
good
lady.
morning, and good night, wherever you are in the world. We greet you and say thank you for joining us again. And yes, today at Safe Space Talks, we have a conversation that we just want to have, just a casual conversation about a topic that everyone at some point may experience. And so the residue of trauma is real. And so a traumatic event involves either a single experience or repeated experiences, so multiple experiences that completely overwhelms an individual. And so it goes beyond your ability to cope with that particular event. And so, what is traumatic for me may not be what's traumatic for Dr. Sharmi. What's traumatic for Dr. Sharmi may not be what's traumatic for Nigeria. And so, when you think of some traumatic experiences, a loss of a parent, right, or loss of a loved one, an accident, for children who have been sick as young children in the hospital, that can be a traumatic experience. And so my daughter was, I believe, around 6 months when she was hospitalized. And so of course she had to get IVs. And even at 6 months, that was imprinted in her brain, because every time we went to the doctor from that point on, when she would cry when she saw people in scrubs. And so if the doctor came in, we had a doctor named Dr. Roseman, very handsome fella in Baltimore. He would come in all dressed nice,
Hey,
had on
doctor.
he was that
I'm the
doctor was
single
fine.
one. I'm the
Listen, I was
single
like,
one.
y'all sick? We need to go see Dr. Roseman today. Yeah, let's go.
Hey, doc.
I just like
Hey,
to look
doc.
at him. But he would be clean. Now she didn't have a problem with him, and he the doctor, because he would be, dressed down. But when that nurse come in there with them scrubs, she would act a complete fool. But that's because that traumatic experience was imprinted in her brain. And so as a baby, she would associate scrubs with pain. And so the
Mm.
scrubs was a trigger for her, because at that time, that traumatic experience, her brain remembered, okay, every time you see these scrubs, this is danger. And so
Right.
she responded the same way. And to this day, she still does not like doctors and nurses and things like that. And so it's, for her, that was a traumatic experience. Now, not every child who goes to the hospital would have that same type of response, but for her, that was traumatic. And so when you look at how does trauma affect a person, it affects a person spiritually, it affects a person physically, right? It affects you in your soul realm. It affects our brains literally change in response to trauma. And so today we're talking about the residue of trauma. And so one of the things we were talking about was, and Dr. Heather always talks about the intergenerational trauma. And so we can experience trauma in utero, in our mother's womb. Her experience to trauma affects us, it affects our brain. And so we're going to be talking about the system in the brain, the limbic system, that's responsible for so many things, but mainly our survival, right? It's the oldest part of the brain, and it is composed of structures like the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus. And so all of these structures play a significant role in our survival. But when we go through trauma, this area of the brain is pretty much hijacked and hyper aroused. And
Yeah.
so when situations arise, we don't have the capability to operate in the higher functioning of our brain, because that hyper aroused system, or the limbic system, hijacks us. And sometimes we just respond, and either we fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Freeze.
And so some people, everything just locked up and you can't move. You ever been in a car where somebody is coming towards you really fast? You can't even scream. You can't
Right.
you can't do anything.
Right,
You just
right.
like, ah, you know. And so, and then fawning is whenever we go through trauma as a kid, we learn, in order to keep our parents happy, or in order to keep from experiencing abuse or getting in trouble, we just have to behave correctly. So we learn to people please. And so all these things are coping strategies, right? Survival strategies for the traumas that we go through. But even though we may go through these different traumas at an early age in our life, as we get older, we could have residue of trauma. And this residue of trauma can impact the way that we live life, our relationships. And so Dr. Sharma and I were just talking about our children. And so, mine had went out and got a crazy tattoo. And she was just telling me, you got to deal with them in grace. And so, but for me, because of everything that I went through in life, as a parent, you want to protect your children, and you don't want them to go through the same things.
Right.
And so sometimes, because of that, we pass that trauma down to our children. And so our experience may not be their experience, but because we have been in that experience, and because we lived it, we try and do everything that we can in order to keep them from going through that. But sometimes we can be impeding their
Come
level
on
of
now.
growth of what
Come
God
on.
has for them. And so we have to remind ourselves that because of the trauma that we went through, right? Because we went through that pressing, now we carry an anointing and an oil that we would not have carried had we not been through that trauma that we went through. And so our children may go through things too. And so we just have to make sure that we provide them with the tools that they have that foundation, so that whenever they go through what they go through, they'll be able to deal with it. And so I've talked enough about trauma. We'll get into some more of the structures in the brain, like the amygdala and the hippocampus and things like that. But I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Sharmi.
Well, thank you. And listen, I love everything you said, especially what caught my attention with what you said was the word hijack, right?
Yeah, me too.
And so that means that something has illegally seized you. When you talk about, my God, when you talk about hijacking, that means that it was something illegally done, right? And so when you think about the dynamics on, even as we're talking about trauma, we have to understand it in the place that, like you said, your daughter, she was a baby. What did she do? Right? Right? She was a baby, but something traumatized her. Right? That experience she had, and many people experiences traumatize us. And what it does is leave residue. And so now we have to be able to overcome the residue of things. If that makes sense. So how as individuals do we overcome? Because many people will say, well, I'm healed of this, I'm healed of that, and I'm healed of this, but you still have residue.
Come on. Let's tell the truth about this.
We don't want to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it today.
But we still have residue. So how do we remove the residue? And here's the thing, because I did a study on residue before, right? And here's the thing about residue, right? Residue is a slight skim of something that it looks clear.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's okay.
Yeah.
But if you look at it clearer, you will see that there is still something on there that's blocking that particular thing from being the best version of what it could be.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So the residue is there, and you don't see, and what's coming to mind right now is the clarity. Like even with a diamond, right? You can have residue on your diamond, although it's real, and it won't have the clarity, right? That it needs to have to give you that gleam. Like, oh, dang, they blinging. But although it's real, it has residue.
Come on.
I will throw this at you.
It has residue.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's so good.
And so when you think about it, you have to understand those are the same dynamics when it comes to us being traumatized. Many people, well, I'm healed of my divorce. Oops. I'm healed of that relationship. Oops. I'm healed of that. I'm healed of this. I'm healed of that. So my question to you though, if you are really healed of it, then why does it still bother you?
Right.
Come on with that.
Yeah,
Oh,
come on. You healed until you come under a certain situation.
Do you see what I'm saying?
You healed until he gets somebody else and buy them a new car.
Do you understand? Wait a minute. So your healing was prevalent until, and oh my God, your healing was prevalent until, and this is how many of us find ourselves. Our healing is prevalent until. And so when we're talking about the dynamics of trauma, and as Dr. LaToya was talking about, she talked about the amygdala a little bit, and I wanted to touch on that because listen, the amygdala is the area of the brain, right, that stores visual images of the trauma, but it does it in fragments. So that means that it's fragments. It's fragments. Like your daughter, she didn't understand everything that happened to her, but she understood that when people were working on it, they had on scrubs. That was a fragment.
Yes.
Even though all the what happened was not clear, she still took a fragment of that traumatizing situation and she held on to that. And now that particular thing has become a form of residue.
That's right.
Oh,
yes, that's it.
It's residue. And so I'm going to stop right here, right? And I'm going to turn this back over to Nigeria, and I'm going to let her seal this up.
Yeah. I mean, I love when you said fragments, right? So let's think about trauma, right? It's something that, one, it is very disruptive. It turns your whole world upside down. You realize you don't have no control of nothing. Okay. You're just in distress constantly. And so once it's imprinted in your brain, and like Dr. Sharmi said, fragments, think of broken glass, right? So now your whole situation, everything about you is broken glass. And this is so good. The Holy Spirit just gave this to me. So you're walking kind of like on eggshells. You don't want to cut your feet. You don't want to step over there.
That's
good. Go over there. You don't want to do this. Oh my God. No. What if it happens again? And now let me bring it personally. Okay. So being in a fire, you know, again, I tell you all the time, smells of smoke, hearing the fire trucks, too much crowded places and spaces, you know, it's kind of, I can be like, okay, you know, it's crowded in here. I need y'all to get back. Now, the reason, and I'm getting ready to help you, the reason I feel like that is because I feel like if something jumps off, I can't escape. So I need room. I need you to back up off of me so I can see my egress, so I can see my escape route, right? But if you all up on me, now I feel claustrophobic, like, oh my goodness, you're too close to me, and you know, get away from me. You know what I'm saying? If I have to run you, I'm gonna run you over.
Yeah.
Okay, so just know that I'm gonna run you over to get to where I need to go. So those are those pieces of fragments in my brain. And so through therapy, right, I've learned to put different things in places for that. Like, okay, if I feel too close, if I feel people are too close to me, don't panic.
Mm-hmm.
Find you a new location. See how, right? It's better said than done. But you see what I'm saying? Find a new location. Remove yourself, right? Because one thing I always encourage people and tell people, you're in charge of you. You're in charge of the engine that's running in your mind. You have to make a conscious decision to do what's best for you. So when you're dealing with trauma, that process of healing is your conscious decision. For me, it was like, I can't live my life like this. So there was a willingness inside of me that was like, I cannot live like this. This is unacceptable, and then by faith, with my faith in Christ, now that word needs to be applied to my life.
Yeah.
Now I have to believe that God gave me dominion, right? I don't have to ask for it. I didn't have to seek for it. It was already in me. It's already in me. So I will hold on to scriptures. Like, earlier I was speaking with Dr. Latoya. He's given us everything for life and godliness. He's given us everything for life, right? He wants to give us life and life more abundantly. Everything about God is grand and great and just super. So then I can't be crazy, right? That's unacceptable. That's an oxymoron. That's against the will of God for my life. I had to keep saying that. This is against the will of God for my life, the life he gave me, the flourishing life he's given me, right? The word says in health, right? You will prosper in health as your soul prosper, right? It's in health. So if I'm already in health, anything against me is against the will of God.
That's right.
And then if I'm promised health because I'm already in health, then health is what I receive, right? So when they tell you, go to the scriptures and find the scriptures that are related to your situation, you have to do the homework, ma'am, sir, as Dr. Sharmy saying. You got to do the homework and be willing to put that process in place. Recently, I can have, there's so much that goes on. For me, PTSD. So I'm constantly aware of what's just going on. I'm just constantly aware. PTSD has heightened me to a level. I think I could be like a secret servant, service person, like, because I can see the person over there in the back with the blue shirt and the brown shoes. I see the woman over there with the umbrella and the red dress. Like I can scope a whole location and identify and know what's going on around me. And so I laugh because I say I never was like that, but now I kind of like it. It's freaky, but I be like, I like being aware of my surroundings. I'm more conscious. Trauma has made me more conscious because one thing for sure, I never, they talk about little T's and big T's. I never want a little T trauma and I never want a big T trauma. When you have a trauma as bad as I feel mine was, and everybody know their trauma was bad, but mine's, I just feel like, oh my God, I don't even know how I survived. That was God all by himself. But you don't ever want to do that again. So trauma is to me, I say, is a taskmaster to help you learn about you, right? Because you realize a lot about yourself. Especially when you unpack in therapy. So I'll pass it to Dr. Latoya.
So I'm so glad that you mentioned just that hyperarousal and your situation. And so you kind of like it, but there are so many people who it pretty much dominates their life when they can't even enjoy an outing. If you think about people who've experienced PTSD, if they've been in war or if they've been molested or raped or attacked, robbed, situations like that, they can't even enjoy something as a picnic. I can remember with my ex-husband, he's Iraqi freedom veteran. When we would go out, like for the 4th of July, oh, it was no enjoyment.
Right.
You know, if we would go to amusement parks, no, you get too close to him, he cussing people out, he ready to fight, he looking, you know, and
Right.
it just for the fact, dude, we can't take you anywhere. You know, now I understand the way that he was, but at the time, you got to think how embarrassing it was to the children, you
Right.
know,
Right.
and just and how it was uncomfortable for him, because I'm sure he felt a level of guilt behind it, and then wonder, why can't I just enjoy
Right.
these family outings like everybody else? And so for you, for me, you know, I laugh because I joke with my husband. I say, you're not really from Detroit, because we go places and I'm like, did you see that? Like, what's going on with him? Because I'm the same way, Nigeria. I'm always on alert. I tell people I don't trust nobody but Jesus. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. And he'd be like, what? I ain't see it. I'm like, dude, what you mean you didn't see it? Aren't you from Detroit? You should be picking up on it. It's like, you know, it should be given, but it's because of the things that I've been through in my life
Right.
and where I grew up. I had to, so I watch everybody. I'm the one scoping out the room and looking at everything, because honey, you move too quick. Do something quick. You know, I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Right.
So
What you doing? What you doing?
and so when we talk about the reactions to trauma, so let's get into a little bit of goes on in the brain. And so we talked about the limbic system, right? And so that is our internal alarm, right? And so when we sense danger, and so danger can be perceived, right? It could be internally perceived
Right.
in our mind, and most of the time it is, or it could be an actual danger, right? But whether it's an actual danger or a perceived threat, our brains are going to react the
Yeah.
same.
Same way.
God has created us so
Same way.
perfectly. And so if something was to happen, you got to be able to get out. You got to be able
Right.
to run. You got to be able to fight whatever it is off. You got to be able to survive. But what's good when it comes to this type of reaction, it's good for that moment, but it's not good for us to live in. And so many
Right.
people who've experienced trauma are constantly living in this hyper aroused state. And so what happens is that alarm goes off, and so it triggers. And Dr. Sharman mentioned a little bit more about the amygdala. And so that's the area of our brain that's responsible for fear, right? For pleasure, and anger and things like that. And so our hippocampus has remembered and have stored certain memories, and she talked segments of memories. And so a flash or a memory can come back in our mind, and then our bodies begin to react as if
Respond.
it
Yeah.
has already has if as if it's happening again, because in our
Again.
brain it's happening again. And so there are certain cues that goes to our adrenal glands, and that releases hormone. And so these hormones will increase our blood flow, and it will go to the major muscles in our bodies. Our heart rate is going to go up.
Yeah.
Our pupils are going to dilate. And so because our body is preparing us to get out of the way fast, right? But those same stress hormones that's responsible for all those things, over a period of time, it can begin to break our bodies down. And so people who are constantly in this type of hyper aroused state will experience more sicknesses, because it affects our
Yeah.
immune system. And so you think about, if your heart rate is constantly up, your heart will get tired of that, right? And so your blood pressure issues, some people can have blood pressure issues and stress, and heart attacks for stress alone.
Mhm.
You know, and so when you think about that, it's the changes to your brain. It compromises your immune system. It compromises your physical body. People go through more chronic pain. Your gut is right. You have so much serotonin in your gut, and so now you don't want to eat, or sometimes people eat too much, right?
Right.
And so so many things can go on in your body as it relates to trauma. And so what you have to begin to do is you've got to restructure your brain. You got to retrain
Yeah.
your brain. So you got to deal with this physically,
Head
you got to deal
on.
with this
Yeah.
spiritually, right? And so and environmentally, if you in an environment where you got constant trauma going on, if you are in an abusive relationship or you at a job that's very stressful, sometimes you got to make some environmental changes, right? We talk about diet all the time. You got to make some dietary changes. You got to get on an anti-inflammatory diet sometimes. Sometimes you may need to restrict yourself from dairy or whatever. And then you got to definitely get in the word, right? I have my scriptures, my landmark scriptures I go to. I'll meditate on them things. I listen,
day and night.
No, devil used a lie. Sometimes out of nowhere, after dealing with patients all day, I'll notice that I'll begin to feel like anxiety's coming on me. Oh no, the devil is a lie. We ain't playing these games. So I'll get into prayer. I'll get into or begin to meditate on scriptures. I'll call somebody. Hey, let's pray. Or I'll listen to something that's soothing, right? I'll listen to certain music, or I'll listen to a certain teaching or something like that. Going for a walk, exercising. Really and truly, sometimes I'll avoid the phone. I don't want to talk to people because right now I got to reset. And so
come on, that's the word,
right? Like just meditative state and being mindful, deep breathing. All these things can help you to begin to retrain your brain, because your brain it's like it's imprinted. I'm talking about sometimes from in utero, it's imprinted on your brain to react a certain way. So sometimes some people hippocampus is shrink, it's smaller. Sometimes people amygdalas are larger than what they're supposed to be. So if you think about, if it's responsible for fear and for aggression, then it makes sense why some people are a little aggressive.
little extra there.
Like you really got to, like I used to ask my ex-husband, like, why do you got to go off? You got to go every time. You got to go off like that. Like there's no inhibition, and it's not. The area of the brain that's responsible for inhibition, remember, it's hijacked by the limbic system.
That's good.
So you can't stop. So sometimes they cannot make those rational decisions that they gotta compute, because that survival brain is like, no, you need to react. You need to punch him in the face. You need to, push. You need to do whatever you got. Look, Nigerians say, I'll push everybody out the way.
No, I won't come through you. I'll be like a football player.
You are not gonna trap me. I'm pushing everybody out the way. So sometimes you can't think clearly. That part of the brain is just is muted, and that limbic system is aroused, and it has hijacked your ability to rationalize and think, okay, maybe this person, like with Dr. Heather's story about in the bank, with her just being, in a hurry, but if you think about a cop or who's seen so many different things, they're trained to respond quickly, they're hyper aroused because they have to be. And so sometimes you can see somebody, you've heard people getting shot, getting their wallet out, but that cop's brain is saying, gun. No, it's not. But he don't have time to think. So that happens when it comes to trauma. Sometimes our brains is so quick, it's so fast, we don't have time to rationalize what's going on. This person may not have meant to offend you at all, but because you have that trauma, that residue of trauma, it's in you, and you're responding like that every single time. So Dr. Sharma, when you were talking, I was thinking about a mirror. When you clean the mirror, and you be buffing, and you come back and you're like, what is this?
That spot.
What is this white residue, and so you may think it's clean, you may think
come on
think that you've gotten over things, but once you're in a certain environment and you come back and you realize, because there is no, God don't have heal. You either healed or you're not.
That's it.
There are processes to healing, right?
I love it.
There's a process to healing, but when God makes you whole, you are whole.
That part.
So you can't, just, hey, I'm a work in progress. I'll tell you right now, I'm a work in progress. There are some things that trigger me, and I know.
Right.
I know myself very well. Don't speak to me that way.
Yeah.
Don't.
And I think trauma does that. Like I said, it's a taskmaster. It teaches you a lot. It
It
teaches
does.
you about how scary you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
you know, people think they tough, and then trauma, and then you get a trigger, and you're like, whoa, wait,
Wait.
you
Yeah.
know,
Out of Dodge. Gone. I ain't waiting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
People wait around for stuff. What are y'all waiting around for? Run. You gonna wait for just being nosy?
I
No.
know that's because they
Run.
haven't had that experience, you know. And I always say, even the trauma for me, like I say, it changed my whole life. One, it made me a better person. You know, I always say it was the worst day and the best day, right? Because I remember speaking to my pastor, and I was like, the person who went in the hospital, I'm not, whoever that was, I'm not that same person. Like, for real. Like, you know, they say die to yourself. She died. She's gone, and literally, I did die, but I'm back. But anyway, who I am now,
Mm-hmm.
I am. I love her. I'm so fascinated by
Yeah.
her. I think she's great. You know, I'm more aware. I'm more conscious. Y'all know I love. That's my word. I have lived.
Yes.
That trauma has made me the most conscious person I know. Like, I am
Mm-hmm.
conscious about how I speak to people, what I do. It has made me weepy because I'm so empathetic. Like, I have so much empathy for people. You know, that's why I can't watch the news. Why they did the child like that? You know,
Mm-hmm.
but I also understand the pleasures of life. Like, it has made me, like, you know, people saying they living their best life, or they pretending or acting like. But until you had a near death experience, I don't even know if you really understand the capacity of living your best life. And me, oh, I live my best life and I enjoy it. And you surround yourself around love, you become loving,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. I can't stand mean and evil, wicked people. They always get on my nerve, you know.
It
But
sounds like you live on purpose,
right,
intentional.
right. As Dr. Heather said, intentional.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You start becoming more intentional about your day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I walked out my door thinking I was going to return home.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think I would be in the hospital for months. I thought
Mm-hmm.
I was leaving and coming right back,
Yeah.
right? So I no longer take things for granted. I
Mm-hmm.
live a very intentional life. Thank you for that, Dr. Latoya. Dr. Sharmi, come on up.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't have much to say because you guys actually really covered this really well. Like, seriously, I mean, when we're thinking about everything that was said just concerning the residue from trauma, um, many of us, everybody experience something that can traumatize them in life. I say this all the time. It's not that you went through it, it's how are you going to respond after you have been
That's
through
good.
Right.
it, right?
Right.
We go through a lot of things, but this is the problem. Many people didn't go through it, they're just still stuck in it.
Mm.
Mm.
It's a difference. You know
Right.
what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? I went through mental illness. I went through it. Like, when you
Right.
look up the word through, that says that you passed through something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But many people get stuck on the process of trying to pass through. So they get stuck in the residue of that trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? And whatever it was that has plagued their lives. But again, I love how Nigeria summed it up. You have to be intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even when you talked about the broken glass and different things like that, Nigeria. One of the things I taught a message years ago about broken but not shattered, right?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That's
You can
good.
you can be broken, but you're not shattered. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
God's able to put all those pieces of
Pieces
your
back.
brokenness back together
Yeah.
again. And that's the thing, I love about God, because he will keep out what needs to be kept out and put in what needs
What
to be
needs to
Mm-hmm.
be
put in.
put in.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what Nigeria said. That girl died,
Yeah.
right? So he took out the things that needed to be took out, and he left in what needed to be left in.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is when you know the Lord, right? The Lord is able to mend those things. And so when we say that we are God's and we know God, then my question is, well, if you really know God, then he's given you the ability to not stay stuck.
Come on.
Right?
That's it.
It's a choice. And I don't believe we realize the dynamics of the choices that we have. These things are choices, right? And I don't think that we can realize as the baby leaves out the room, right? Then you gotta love SST. Right. You know what's gonna happen, right?
And real, okay.
Oh my God. But anyway, the dynamics of it, just concerning, what people go through in life, and we're talking about the dynamics of people being traumatized and the residue that kind of stays with people. It's a choice. You have to be intentional. You have to be intentional. Your life requires you to be intentional. And many of us don't live in that state where our lives will require me to be intentional about different things and aspects just through life. We live haphazardly, so many of us, right?
Right. That's
And it's not good that we live haphazardly, right? We need to own our day, right? We don't own the day, right? You have to own your day. You have to be intentional. You have to make sure each day is going to count for me, right?
Come on.
So when you get to a place, though, and so some of you could be saying, well, that sounds good, but you don't understand what I'm going through. And I will tell you, that's the wrong answer.
That's right.
That's the wrong answer, because you're talking to people who been there. So it's different from me coming on and telling you about something that I did not walk through, right? That was my thing. I'd be like telling people, you don't know what I'm going through. You ain't been through this and you ain't been through that. But all that good scripture, all that good word still ain't helping me, because you don't know what I am going through. You don't know my experiences. And I love how LaToya said that. You don't know that this thing affected me the way that it affected me. It may didn't affect you like that. But I'm not talking about just being affected. I walk through mental illness. So I understand some of the dynamics better than y'all even understand. Until you're able to walk around with this in your head all day long, then you can come and talk to me and tell me what I don't understand about mental illness, okay? But until then, you can't tell me that I don't understand the things that I talk about. And and not just talk about, but also offer strategies and tools to help you to walk through it.
Come on.
Because it's a process.
Yes.
It's a process.
We
look at scripture. Well, Jesus healed the man, the man with the legions of demons, and he healed him. How long did it tell you how long that man was there with that mental illness? So that means that he walked through a process, right? He had to have a process. Right. We don't know. The Bible don't give us the clue, or it's not clear that even if he had those moments where his inner man was crying out to God for relief.
Come on, man.
What I'm telling you. And so when we're talking about these dynamics, then you have to understand. We understand these dynamics of trauma, but we also understand that there is a scapegoat.
Come on, right? You can't be delivered.
We understand that it's possible for people to be set free.
And
we understand that possibility can come by way of therapy. It can come by way of deliverance. It can come by the way of being intentional about your diet. It can come by way. It's so meditate. It can come so many different ways, because God fashioned us all differently.
But it starts with you.
That's the point.
That's it.
That's it.
It
starts
with
you and your choice and your decision.
That's it.
Choices and decisions.
That's it.
You just said it. Choices and decisions. What choice? And see, this is why we talking about the residue. So, because some people, and this is the sad part. Some people are comfortable in their residue.
Come on. Oh my God. That's it. That is so true.
I'm gonna stop right there.
Go ahead, Dr. Latoya. Give it to Dr.
Because you
Latoya.
want come and will get mad at you. You know, you don't get mad at me because I recognize the residue and I know that there's greater for you. But you're so comfortable in it that you get mad at me for pointing out the fact that you could be free. And so it's like it's all about mindset.
Yeah. Come on, come on.
It's you can choose to be a victim or you can choose to be a victor. The choice is, God said, I place before you life and death. Choose life. I hope you would choose life, but at the end of the day, you have a choice. So you can choose to be a victim or you can be a victim. All things work together for those who love God. All things work together for the good of those. So if I know it's going to work together for my good, I've already won.
That's right.
He always calls us to triumph. So even though you may experience or may have experienced the trauma or the complex trauma, because many of us, especially in the African American community, come on, we've got generational trauma that's been passed down, you know. And I can't even remember the statistics, but I saw something so alarming about the crime in Chicago, about how many deaths that kids see by a certain age, and it was so alarming. So you complex trauma over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, you have a choice. And if I know that all things are going to work together for my good, then I can't focus on the trauma. I have to focus on the promise. I have to focus on the fact that I am healed. I have to focus on, and you know what? I say make the devil pay. Period. Make the devil pay for the pain that you've been through. You know what I'm saying? And so right now we doing Safe Space Talks. Dr. Sharmi has written several books. She's an international speaker. Okay.
Yes.
Nigeria has her magazine and her companies and things like that. We're making the enemy pay for the pain that we've been through. So we not just choosing to lie down in the stuff that we've been through and say, oh my God, I'm a victim. Well, God he healed that person overnight and I'm still struggling and going through. Okay, that's not your testimony. God want to work some things out of you. It's a process because there are some things that can't go with you in that next season of your life. It's a process probably because you may have to minister to somebody else who's been through what you've been through or maybe worse. How are you gonna help somebody something you haven't even been processed through? And so if he heal you too quickly, you might not even understand. Dr. Sharmi can understand all these things because she went through it step by step, day by day. She went through the healing, the whole process. She can tell you about the water. She can tell you about the diet. She can tell you about how she trained her mind. She can tell you about the meditation. If she had not went through that process, then she wouldn't be able to write the books on it. She wouldn't be able to teach on it. And so now she's victorious instead of choosing to be a victim. I'm pretty sure she's seen people who we done been to deliverance conferences and they didn't lay hands or wave their hand. People done fell all out and got up. They came in there limping and in a wheelchair. They got up walking, dancing. And you like, now wait a minute, Lord, it would only take all that to heal me.
Right.
You know, I ain't even that bad off. But I know you can do it. But it's a process for some of us. But at the end of the day, you have to choose to be a victor. You have to choose to allow the things that you've been through to pay you. I mean, I'm serious. Books, movies, speaking engagements, businesses, becoming a counselor, a therapist, whatever, make that stuff pay. And then too, just by being able to minister and pour into somebody else, like you don't know what the connectivity that you have with somebody else, how it can affect them and thousands or millions of people. One word you can speak to somebody that can change their life and can turn their lives around. That could be the next Elon Musk. You never know.
That's right.
And so just because you've been through it doesn't mean you have to stay in it. And my mentor always say, you will break through, but you won't break down. The choice is up to you. You can break down or you can break through. So what we're saying is it's a choice to either allow God to continue to heal you from the rest of that residue that's there, or stay in it. We can't tell you what to do. We can just give you the facts. We can give you our testimony. We can encourage you because you want to have full life, right? You want to have
Come
life
on.
more abundantly. You don't want to walk around with those things and allowing those situations to control your life, allowing those relationships to control your life. That thing happened in the past, but it's still controlling you now. It's robbing you of
That's
your life
good.
But
today.
here's the thing: it's not only controlling their now; it's controlling their future.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think people miss that concept that whatever's controlling your now is controlling your future.
Yeah, this is true.
I mean, and that's just the truth. And David said something, and um, David said something, and David said, this is scripture. It's like in the Bible, you guys, in the book of Psalms, right? And
Well, y'all know I keep my Bible handy, but
and he said this. He said that his soul refused to be comforted.
yeah.
He said, my soul refused to be comforted. So that helped me to understand that people can be bringing us comfort, or God can allow people or comfort to come our way, and we can refuse
it.
Come
And
on.
so you got to understand it wouldn't be there if you could not be healed or free from it. David said, my soul refused the comfort that was given to me.
Yeah.
So your soul, which is your mind, your will, and your emotions, can refuse comfort even when comfort comes. So even if help come to you, your soul will be like, no, I don't need that. How many times we heard that? Oh, I don't want that. Oh, that ain't now, all this hip stuff.
Negative.
It don't take all that.
Right. Don't take all that. Right.
That one. It don't take all that.
Take
Yeah,
all
it do
that.
take all
You do
that.
too much.
It take you. That's just doing too much. See, all of those is your soul refusing
Come on,
the
man.
comfort that God is trying to bring into it, and then we turn around and feel ill about God, like He ain't trying to help
Come
us.
on.
Come on.
But I ain't gonna even go there because I'm finna end this. All right, I'm gonna down, and I'm gonna end this out. This has been a joy.
Yeah.
It's been a privilege to just discuss the dynamics of the residue of trauma. And I love what Nigeria and I love what Latoya and everybody has brought to the table today. And we just want to say, hey, we're here. We will be live in New York, y'all.
Yes.
SST is going live.
That's right.
So we are going to be in New York in July 22nd, and we will be live in New York.
It's a live taping.
Oh, a live taping. Yes.
Yeah.
How about that? A live taping.
Yeah.
It's going to be
We
so
have
good.
a great sponsor, right?
Yeah.
Carbon Juice Lounge.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys so
And
much.
if y'all want to sponsor us, just let us know. You can reach us at safespacetalks@gmail.com.
There you go, right there. We have it right there. She said it all fast, but it's going across the screen, right?
Okay.
And so listen, safespacetalks@gmail.com. And listen, you guys, we were new. And so we wanted to test the waters and we wanted to jump out here and see. So trust me, we going somewhere with this. So in a minute, you ain't going to see the Gmail. In a minute, you ain't going to see the Restream. We just testing waters right now to see how and things are good and they're picking up and we see how much this is needed from this space.
Right.
Yes.
From this space.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? From this space,
Right.
right? We see that it's needed from here. And so with that being said, God bless you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.